Are you going to join me for a change? Nope. That was that. Hello, welcome to Books at the Bottom of the Stairs. My name is Lorene. This is the third week of the Newbery Challenge, and I'm doing year 2004. The books that were awarded winner and honorable mention of that year was Despereaux by Kate DiCamillo, who, if you read middle books for middle readers, you will have come across her. She's just one of the most delightful authors there is out there. She really has got a way of telling a story that is completely wholesome, yet has some kind of an adventure to it and some sort of a dilemma. And I don't know, there's always, do you see those photos that have the little bit of the fuzzy picture filter around it? It's kind of like that. You go into a Kate DiCamillo book and you just know you're going to come out feeling warm and good. So anyway, Despereaux was a really sweet little story about a mouse who had some adventures that he wanted to do. And the two honorable mentions of that year was Olive's Ocean, which I'm going to talk about, and American Plague by Jim Murphy, that is not available at the library, and I don't know what it's about. I suppose one year what I'll do is I'll just have to do, one year I'll do a year of all the books that I couldn't get hold of. So what is Olive's Ocean about? It's a very lovely book. It's by Kevin Henkes, and I really enjoyed this one. This was sort of, I made a little bit of a mistake in that I read 2005 before 2004, so my mind was swirling in terms of what I had previously read and what I was reading here, because of some interesting contrast and that kind of thing going on. So it took me a little bit to just let go of the previous book and get into the head of our little protagonist here, who's Martha Boyle. Martha Boyle is a little girl in, I guess she's about 12 years of age, and in her class was another little girl, Olive Barstow, who had been killed earlier in the school year by a car accident. And she is she's sort of never really comes on stage, if that makes sense. She is present, but because she has died before the story has begun, she is, she's not really a ghost. She's a ghostly figure in the sense that she permeates Martha's thoughts, because Olive's mom has come up to visit Martha. There had been something in Olive's journal that she mentioned about Martha, and Olive's mother felt that Martha would like to have it. So it begins the journey for Martha. And the story time takes place during the summer when Martha is about to go to her grandmother's summer. Oh, her grandmother lives on the East Coast, close to the ocean, year-round, but the family goes and visits for about a week or so. So she and her brother and younger sister and parents are off to go and visit Godby, who is the name that they give their grandma. Martha's having a lot of sort of what would typically be called coming of age issues. I never like that term because we're always coming of age. I'm 62 and still doing it. So she's having 12-year-old typical kinds of questions around life and death and her role in the family and her role in the school and just, you know, where she is in position to other people. And because Olive has died, she's more acutely aware of death than other people. Olive was not a particularly strong personality in her class. So Olive was always hanging in the background. She didn't have any real friends. She was a loner. And to have been singled out by Olive in Olive's journals makes Martha just kind of question her own behavior. Had she been miserable to Olive? No, it wasn't a bullying thing that was going on. Had she been kind? No, she didn't really think particularly. So Olive and Martha have some dreams that are very, very similar. And Martha decides to try and see what she can do about enacting these dreams in her own life, to just see, you know, if she can put herself in the footsteps of Olive. So this whole story takes place at the beach for I'd say 90% of it's taking place at the beach. And she has a very lovely relationship with her grandmother. Her parents I didn't love. I particularly didn't like the mom. I just felt she was a real drain on childhood. I don't know. She just had these expectations that I thought, go away. You're such an old lady. Like you're like, she was just an old lady. They're at the house of her mother, and the grandma was much more younger in spirit and that sort of thing than the mother was. So I really found the mother disappointing. On the other hand, you need to have a range of characters in order that you've got a good, good texture, good kinds of darkness and lightness happening. So Martha's really entranced by Boyd down the beach, whose family lives there year-round. And there are 4 boys in the family, and maybe even 5. There's so many you can't even really tell. And her brother Vince goes over there to play. He's about 14 years old, so soccer and swimming and all that kind of thing. And they come up with a cruel trick to play on Martha. So if I give you anything more, I'm going to really start spoiling this story. Martha has to come to terms with the trick that's being played with her. It is mean, and that's where, again, the cat's upstairs running around. She doesn't usually do that. If you hear her. Anyhow, again, this is where I felt that the parents just were so disappointing, because the parents never really found out about the trick. So on the one hand, they couldn't have acted in a way that would have supported Martha. She keeps this as a secret. But on the other hand, I don't think they would have. I just get the feeling that somehow they were just not terribly connected to their kids, which was too bad. Small detail though. I love this story. I want to read a little paragraph to you on how she writes, how Kevin writes. But what we're getting is Martha's imagery through the hands of the author, Kevin. The glittery feeling. She'd named it because it felt to her as if her skin and everything beneath it briefly became shiny and jumpy and bubbly, as if glitter materialized inside her, then rose quickly through the layers of tissue that comprised her, momentarily sparkling all over the surface of her skin before dissipating into the air. Martha closed her eyes and let her arms drift slightly upward. She couldn't help herself. A small, joyful squeak escaped from her throat. And it's just, isn't that lovely? It's before they get to the beach. It's her excitement about going on the trip. And there's moments like this all the way through the book. Kevin really writes a beautiful lyrical scenario, and the dialogue that's around the kids is very, very much of their age. You really feel as if you would be listening in on their conversations. I think this, it's interesting because I think this definitely is a very strong contender when you compare it to Despereaux. Although I keep saying I don't want to know whether, you think this book should have won or shouldn't have won, but it is a very, very strong book. And what is the thing that surprises me the most about this book is 2004. I think, 20 years later on, this book still stands out in terms of what a 12-year-old girl would be going through with an older brother, older boys around her, what it's like to be coming into puberty, and not driven by all the anxiety that we have seen in some of these books for the last few years, where we've got, it's sad that Olive has died, but Martha's not emotionally connected to that. She's just bringing it into her world, whereas in recent books we've got a much more direct link between the protagonist and some kind of not nice thing happening. And so I like that there was distance between her and her thoughtfulness and the sad thing that happened to Olive. I'm glad that we didn't have a protagonist that was just in the depth of despair. And we do have, sometimes people talk about how these books are supposed to be opportunities for children to see themselves in literature so that they can have some kind of role model or fellow traveler. And there are children who experience death of classmates, but they're not necessarily terribly connected to that classmate. Sometimes you can get some, you know, some connected emotions because all of a sudden death. But Martha's not like that. She's not that kind of a character. She's very thoughtful. And I like that there's just not a lot of, what would you call it, like hysteria or deep grief. It's, I can't think of the word. It's even-handed. That doesn't mean it isn't a very good book. You know, sometimes we don't need to have big valleys and mountains of conflict and despair and all the other things that we find in books. And it's just really a pleasant read, but it's more than a pleasant read. It's kind and thoughtful, and she's also coming to terms, I guess, with her brother, sort of leaving the nest of being a tight sibling. You know, he's getting his own voice, he's getting his own activity. He's 14, she's 12, she's just on the cusp of puberty. He's into puberty, so there's this kind of splitting apart and yet trying to come to terms with still being in a relationship with her brother. But nothing is just desperate. It's just so nice that way. Yeah, that's about all I have to say about that. It was a bit rambly, sorry. We have a very gloomy day outside, so I hope that where you are, you've got a little bit more sparkle happening, much like Martha had in her part of the story. I hope all your reading dreams and adventures continue to come true, and I'll see you next week. Bye. Okay, I should be done, and it should be before 11.
Okay. Yes, it is. Are you feeling rushed?
Nope.